Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Arsaholics podcast. We have just witnessed an incredible game against Wolves away at Molineux. We have won 1-0. I'm still kind of recovering from it, Mice. So I've got Mice here with me. Mice, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm happy to be back. It's been a while since I've been on a pod, I think, because I wasn't on the last one, and there's obviously been a big gap since our last game as well. So nice to be back, and yeah, like you said, recording straight after the game. So yeah, it was a tense one at the end. So very, very happy and quite surprised actually that we come away with a win.
Yeah, I mean, so much to talk about. But again, we should apologize for there just being two of us again, although seems to be a theme. But Aaron has landed back from his honeymoon. He did watch the game. So, there is an argument to say that he should have just turned up to the podcast, but apparently he's had 3 hours sleep and, he was just worried about his reputation and not being on his game, right? If he's going to be here and sleep deprived and all the rest of it. But you've got Miles and myself, and let's just, before we get into the game, let's just cover off some of the important stuff around the lineups, etc., just in case anyone didn't get to catch the game. So Arsenal had a massive gap between their last game and this one. They've gone out to Dubai, had a fantastic hot weather training camp, come back, and a lot of the players who were out previously, either through suspension or injuries, have managed to come back. The big name who isn't quite back yet and wasn't deemed fit for this game was Takahiro Tomiyasu. He unfortunately couldn't make it. He's not fit yet, but he is in training. But the lineup that we went with there for Ramsdale in goal, Kieran Tierney on the left, Cedric on the right, Ben White, Gabriel, self-explanatory in the centre, midfield, Thomas Partey and Xhaka retaining kind of, coming back as a combination for the first time, it feels like in a little while because of suspensions, etc. Odegaard playing as a 10, Saka and Martinelli in the wide positions, and Lacazette up front. So in many ways, it's probably an unsurprising lineup, right? Given we knew that Tomiyasu's situation was a bit precarious.
Yeah, pretty much. I think, Tomiyasu was the only question mark. I guess the only interesting thing about the selection was he went with Cedric over holding at centre-back and pushing Ben White out to right-back, as he's done in the last game or like a couple of games ago, I can't remember when, but quite recently, while Tomiyasu's been out. But kind of understandable, really, because if you think about the players that Wolves have got, quite nippy, tricky players, maybe not the best game to have Rob Holding at centre-back and Ben White at right-back. Probably want to keep the strong centre-back pairing and have a traditional right-back at right-back like Cedric.
It's a really good point, actually. I didn't pick up on that myself. Yeah, so it's an interesting change in strategy there. And I guess it shows that Arteta is always really keen to assess the opposition before he's going to make a decision like that. And it's not a case where we have a first choice kind of alternative to rectifying the Tomiyasu situation. So that's the lineup we went in with. And geez, I mean, we start with 11, but we never finish with 11 these days, do we? So we finished with 10 men. We played a large chunk of the game with 10 men. We've managed to pull off a 1-0 victory. We did manage to score the goal in the first half when we did have 11. It was a corner. It was kind of the second ball on the corner that came through, and Gabriel scored. We can talk about that in a second. But Miles, just before we get into some of the details, I mean, we played half an hour or so again with 10 men. We'll talk about the sending off itself again later, but is this a case where we're just getting good at playing with 10 men because it's happening a lot?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think naturally, like they say, like I've never been on the inside of a football club to know kind of too much about how training goes and how it's organized and the situations that coaches set up. But one situation that seems to be pretty common across all professional football clubs or at that level is playing 11 against 10, 11 against 9, trying to defend a lead and having that scenario, and I guess we seem to be doing that, like you say, in it's like on the job experience type of thing. So I guess naturally they are going to be getting better at it. It's not ideal, it's obviously not ideal, but I guess what you definitely can see from this team, and we've seen it multiple occasions, not just when we've gone down by a player or two, but in general, the fight in this team and I think there's two things, right? There's the ability to be able to set up and defend, whether you're trying to defend a draw or a lead away from home, in those sorts of games. And then there's also like I say, the fight and the real passion to not want to concede a goal, if that makes sense. Like just wanting to shut out and dealing with everything that comes into the box and clearing your lines, and everyone kind of on the same page. And it really does feel like that's where the team are at the moment. I'm not saying that every single game is going to be a defensive masterclass and we're not going to concede goals, because we are, but you can definitely see that trend. And it's we've mentioned it before when we've spoken about it, having a settled kind of back four, back five. Okay, Tommy Yasu didn't play today, but having a consistent back two and knowing who your first choice players are in all of those positions must help. And I think there's probably a number of factors. They're playing together regularly. The personnel that we've got, when you look at bringing in players with the kind of attitude of Ramsdale and Ben White, Tierney. So yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's not ideal going down to 10 men in any game, especially this sort of game. It is. I'm sure it's going to cost us if it carries on like this. It has cost us in the past, and I'm sure it will. But we managed to kind of ride it out today, which was really, really nice to see.
Arteta in his post-match said a really similar thing. He don't know if you heard it, but he effectively did say, "Look, it's not sustainable to win games with 10 players. It's not going to happen very often." And obviously, it's clearly not part of any sort of plan whatsoever. But you mentioned passion, which I agree with. The defenders and Ramsdale, I've heard in various interviews, have talked about their passion for keeping clean sheets and how much they love defending, which is great to hear. How much also do you think it's to do with belief? Because this team, they've seemed to have played a number of games, not just when we've gone down to 10 men, but other times of the season where they've been under the cosh and they've been able to sustain that pressure, and they've been able to come away with a clean sheet. And now more recently with this kind of the 10 men, let's call it the 10 men era, for a little bit, when we had the Liverpool game, for example, at Anfield in the Carling, I always say Carling, in the Carabao Cup, where I think it got on everyone's radar. I think then kind of people outside just the Arsenal fan base were quite impressed with this resilience, etc. that we showed in that game. But that's not an isolated incident. That game has proven, and today has proven it's not isolated. This bunch of players, for me, it's not just a passion thing. It feels like a belief thing. It feels like even when they go to 10 men, they know if they need to keep a clean sheet, they are absolutely capable of doing so. And it doesn't get to the final 5 minutes or 10 minutes in injury time or whatever, where we're under the cosh and the players feel the inevitable. I never get a sense now that they feel like, oh, the opposition are going to score and it all gets a bit desperate. I feel like it's a very composed set of players who really truly believe they're going to keep a clean sheet. How much do you think that's down to Arteta and the coaching staff, and how much do you think it's down to the types of characters themselves that we have in the team?
Yeah, I think it's down to all of those things completely. Like I think when you look at the team that Arteta took over it's been 2 years now, so yeah, a couple of years ago, number one, personnel, like he's reshaped the squad, reshaped the team. Like I mentioned before, the back five is now a back five that there's no like questions asked about who would be starting. If Tommy Yasu is fit today, we know it's a settled defensive line, settled goalkeeper. So absolutely, that's kind of on Arteta. That's on the recruitment side of things. And similarly, having a set piece coach, like we've talked about it. I think you mentioned it today when we were talking about it during the game. Attacking set pieces were good today. Defensively, not just set pieces, but balls being thrown into the box, especially in that last kind of half an hour. The team seemed to know how to deal with those situations. We seem to have some really good, in terms of Ben White, Gabriel, Xhaka, Rob Holding, players who really quite enjoy the aerial battle and balls getting thrown into the box, and them just doing everything to get it out and get it clear, and winning headers and winning those battles, which is really, really nice to see. And yeah, like I said, I think that comes down to obviously the coaching and implementing things like the set piece coach. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, like you said, and I think we've sort of said it. It's it's a build up's not the right term, but it's a you know, going through, it's almost like this team are basically willing to fight for each other, and they've had to do that a few times this season. There's been some tough games, but they're coming away with, I think we've got like 10 or 11 clean sheets in the league this season, which is pretty remarkable. I think it's only City and Liverpool who've got more, and not many more. I think City have got like 13 or something. I was looking at it earlier. So, for a pretty young team with a, fairly inexperienced goalkeeper and two pretty young centre backs, that's really, really impressive.
Absolutely, mate. And let's reflect on the game more broadly, but even probably still sticking with this theme a little bit, because I think it naturally is going to be the case. If we ignore the period that we played with 10 men, we started the game with 11, as you know. The first half, let's reflect on the first half a little bit, because for me, I had anxieties about how we might start the game because of the gap between, when our last game was. And it feels like often when that happens, you're not always, the pace of the game isn't quite there. Passes are a little bit shorter, etc. How did you feel we started, and were you pleased with how we set up and approached the game? And what did you think about how Wolves came across as well?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a fairly even start to the game. Like first 15, 20 minutes, I thought it was pretty tight, quite drab. Martinelli started really lively, as he always does. He was really kind of harassing the defense, trying to win the ball back. He had a couple of good moments. I think we struggled to get Saka into the game a little bit, although he did have that, that really good a bit of play where Laka almost scored with that 1-2 with Erdegaard. But I think, he was fairly quiet. So, I mean, in terms of the overall performance in the first half leading up to the goal, I thought the goal kind of it wasn't a case of we were really dominating and the goal came as a result of that. I think it came from a set piece, obviously, came a little bit out of the blue, and it was a really, really scrappy goal, which kind of which aligns with kind of how the game was really. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much we looked like, obviously, look, we're fresh in terms of having pretty much a full strength team, and the players should all be ready to go, but not quite, I guess, having not played for so long, 2.5 weeks or whatever it's been, there is that, like you say, that worry that they're going to start a bit slow. I don't think it was either of those things. I think it was just we came up against a team who are very dogged, very good defensively, and we probably struggled a little bit. They've got good midfielders as well. Like, I do like Neves in central midfield, and I just think it was quite an even first half, and we just kind of got that little rub of the green, that little bit of like a little break basically for the goal, which sort of changed the game from that point on a little bit. And the other thing that's probably worth mentioning is, I don't know if you noticed it, Raj, but like, it did feel like once we scored, we did the same thing that we this team does do, which is we don't go for the second. And again, it's not an easy place, to go to, Molineux, and Wolves have been good this season. And we know that they don't concede many goals, but it would be nice to start seeing that. Not that I'm complaining, because we got the win today, but it would be nice to start seeing that kind of, we've got the first, let's take the game to them and try and get the second, and almost kind of kill it off in the first half. I don't know if you've noticed that or thought that.
I noticed it. What I also noticed, though, in a positive way, is I felt like we came out of that quicker than we do normally. So it felt like we scored the goal. Yes, there was a bit of caginess, but we've seen that caginess, I think, in games previously go on for 15, 20 minutes plus before it kind of feels like something might, and if we get away with not conceding in that period, we get a kick up the backside and change. But it felt like we sort of snapped out of that a little bit quicker this time, and I felt that we ended the first half quite well. And the second half, I remember sort of around that 55-minute period, the 60-minute period, basically the period before Martinelli got sent off, I thought we were playing some really good football and kind of seemingly kind of really frustrating Wolves. And Wolves were the ones making a lot of the kind of little frustrating kind of fouls, etc. But I agree with what your consensus was generally in the first half, though. It felt like two managers who have a lot of attention to detail, who had given their players a lot of very specific instructions. And I think they were both willing to be relatively conservative. I saw what it felt like was two very well defensively coached teams playing today.
Yeah.
Neither was giving really anyone any space. Like you say, our goal was scrappy. I don't think we necessarily deserved it, but I don't think we didn't deserve it. I think any team who went behind would have felt a little bit hard done by at that point. But the goal itself came from an asset that we've had this season, which has been our set piece. Our ability to from attacking set pieces. And in even more of a compliment to that, it's the first time that Wolves have conceded from a set piece this season.
Yeah,
so clearly they're a good team at defending it. Now, some people might say, if we talk through kind of the actual how we scored itself, some people would probably say, okay, actually, but that's just a scrappy goal, because ultimately it's not that it's come from a direct header. It's kind of come back out, and then Ben White's headed it kind of back into play, and then Lacker's shown amazing desire to try and sort of get there, and it's, he's collided with the goalkeeper, but then it's fallen to Gabriel and he scored. A point I want to make, though, is that it feels like set piece coaches do a lot of work at the moment with their teams on the second ball, about after the first phase of play, essentially. And they're very, very meticulous as to where they instruct their players to be, so that when that ball comes back out, people are in positions to capitalize. So I don't think it's any sort of surprise or coincidence or bit of luck that Ben White was where he was and had the awareness to put it back in, and Gabriel had the awareness to stay alert. I think that's something that they work on. What did you think? Do you share that consensus? Do you think I'm being a bit, generous?
I'll be honest, I hadn't actually sort of considered that or thought about that until you pointed it out. But it's I guess we'll never know, right? Like, if we start scoring loads of goals from corners, or we start creating lots of chances from corners, which, to be fair, I think we've been pretty good this season, then you could see there's clearly a trend, and you could maybe attribute that to the sort of work we're doing on the training ground. But yeah, no, it's an interesting point, and like, I can't disagree with it. I think the thing that stands out for me, and I think I said this earlier in the season when Smith Rowe was starting more games, and he was I think he was taking most of the corners on our left hand side. I can't remember which side he would be taking them in from, but whichever side it was. And he has a way of delivering corners which are he just always seems to hit corners into into that area right in front of the keeper, hits them quite with a lot of pace and a lot of dip. And that's what Martinelli's corner was like today as well. It was a really, really dangerous corner, and it all kind of stemmed from that, where they couldn't clear the ball, and like you said, it landed where Ben White was able to put it back into the mixer, as it were. Which I don't know, like, these guys must be practicing not just the kind of the phases of a set piece or the phases of a corner and the second ball, like you say, Raj, but also just the delivery itself. Like me and you, and going to games, how many times have we, watching Arsenal, and especially in frustration in the stadium, when we've been getting corners, we're generally a quite attacking team, especially at home, win a fair few corners, and it's hitting the first man. It's just constantly hitting the first man. And they've definitely improved on that. And we seem to have, obviously, very, very good players when you think of Ødegaard and Saka and Smith Rowe and Martinelli, very good players on the ball, very good technical players, and they seem to be able to deliver a very good cross from a corner as well, which is something that I've definitely noticed as an improvement.
Yeah, definitely. And long may it continue, because I think if we're going to be a side that maybe lacks a centre forward who's going to score loads of goals, if we're going to play games where we're going to need to be a little bit cagey, because, we're going to play, a game like Wolves away like this, where it's not going to be that free flowing, having set pieces in your locker is super important, right? I mean, it's just great to have lots of different options in that way. Just moving on slightly to a slightly different topic. So there was obviously a massive moment in the sending off, and that in itself we should talk about. But just leading up to that sending off, it was a very interesting performance from Michael Oliver, I felt, today, and the team of officials. It felt like initially they really did try and manage the game without dishing out the cards. It felt like there were a number of things that happened where they could have dished out the cards, and then sort of ramped up a little bit, and then kind of just icing on the cake was the sending off itself. Before we just talk about the sending off itself, how did you think the refs performed today?
It was like, I noticed the same as what you said. in regards to there were no yellow cards given. There were probably not too many bad tackles, maybe questionable on a couple in that first half an hour. But then Thomas Partey, I think he was the first player to get booked, and he seems to get booked for I mean, you could argue that's a yellow card challenge, but I feel like if he's let a lot of the other ones go, you could have probably let that one go as well. I didn't really feel like it was a strong yellow card. And then I think literally a few minutes later, a Wolves player gets booked. Is it Sice, I think, gets booked.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that was a bit odd for me. Aside from that, I'm just sort of trying to think like how Oliver performed otherwise. I mean, look, to be honest, for me, it's all about the red card.
Let's talk about that then.
Yeah, it's just
Talk us through it.
I mean, so I mean, look, when it happened, so when he gives the red card, he gives the 2 yellows and gives the red card. I hadn't really seen the first incident with Martinelli on the touchline where he's obviously like tried to block the throw in or whatever he's tried to do. So I hadn't really seen that. So I was just completely baffled as to what had happened. Kind of similar to how Martinelli reacted. I just no idea what had just gone on. Seeing it back, I mean, look, I think letter of the law. No, I'd say letter of the law. I think if those 2 incidents happen in isolation, you could argue, you know, if you're on the receiving end of those, you could argue, yeah, they're both yellow cards. And by the letter of the law, you could argue they are both yellow cards. At the same time, I feel like the first one is incredibly soft. Like, I don't know, do you think that if, let's just say, in that scenario, Martinelli tries to kind of block the throw in, puts his arm up, whatever. Okay, if it hits his hand, he probably gets yellow. But if he just sort of touches the play, like puts a bit of pressure on, I don't know what you know what I mean. Like he puts his arm on the Wolves player's shoulder, I think it is, as he's trying to take the throw in, kind of prevents him from doing that. Normally, what happens is the Wolves player will just be like, "Oh, what the hell, man!" Like appeal to the ref, and the ref will just go like, just probably warn Martinelli. It's not like he's been committing fouls all game, and then just tell him to take the throw in. So, like, I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, that first incident just feels ridiculously soft. And then the second kind of issue I've got with this is just how he's decided to manage the whole situation. Yeah. Like, it just feels like there was just absolutely no need. Like, it is silly from Martinelli, and you can see he's a bit wound up from losing the ball, whatever's happened, and he's obviously just charging forward. And the second one is a yellow card, but at the same time, surely, just to kind of not, I mean, look, it didn't ruin the game. And if you're Wolves, you're obviously going to want a red card, but more so, not so much. I'm just thinking of, it could have potentially ruined the game. If Wolves had gone on to win the game and we kind of crumbled because we've gone down to 10 men, you know, arguably that sending off has had a massive impact. I guess we're still talking about it because it's still very odd passage of play, as it were. But if we'd gone on to lose a game, we'd be like focusing on that more than probably a number of other things that we're talking about. But yeah, that was kind of my thoughts on it. I don't know if you feel differently on that.
I mean, loads of thoughts, including everything that you've said. I think one of the things is that if he had given a yellow card and just a yellow card, I don't think there'd been one Wolves player who would have been demanding for a sending off. Right. And that's a really interesting situation to be in. Secondly, what I'd say is, initially, when the first incident happened, I was really worried that the ref didn't spot it and it was going to go to VAR because it happened so quickly. I was worried that effectively it looked like he'd lashed out and hit him in the face. And so my concern was that's going to go to VAR and he's going to get sent off. Now, in slow motion, like when you look at it back, it definitely doesn't look as bad because it basically does look like he's reacting in anger, which arguably, therefore, regardless of whether he's made contact with the elbow or the face or whatever, if the referee thinks he's flung his arm around in anger, then I believe that's a yellow card. But you know, it hasn't hurt the player. He's literally like, for me, it feels like he's got frustrated. He didn't get the foul. He doesn't want the player to get an advantage by running, so he's kind of flung his arm out more to just almost hold off the player. Yeah. So it does. So you know, overall, when you look at it kind of that way, you think, okay, yeah, like it's a little bit harsh. But then, you know, the second one is probably a yellow card offence, but it's just one of those things where it was managed in such a way where Michael Oliver, the moment he blew his whistle, he was very clear what he wanted to do. He was immediately pointing to the two things. He said, yellow, yellow, like you're off. It wasn't like in this period he kind of had a doubt, and that it felt like he had a very clear idea in his mind that's what he was going to do. Now, I feel really conflicted by this in a number of ways, because on one hand, I do feel it was really stupid for Martinelli to do what he did, because he's clearly got wound up. He's clearly annoyed, and he's kind of like stretched his arm out in the first instance. So he sort of knows that's the bit where he's kind of got his anger out, you'd hope, but he's just sprinted down and committed another foul. So you sort of think, mate, I bet in your wildest dreams you didn't think you're going to get sent off, fair enough. But there's just still no need for 2 acts of petulance in such a small kind of period of time, because you're bound to at least get 1 yellow. And, ultimately it's come out with something kind of even worse. So I'm kind of annoyed at Martinelli for being really petulant and just unnecessary. But as well, I agree with you in that I think it was just managed really, really badly. And for me, it comes back to my original point, which is that if he gave a yellow, there's no Wolves player that was going to complain. Right.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is normally a player gets a yellow, they have time to then kind of reset and decide how they're going to approach the rest of the game, right? I mean, Martinelli's not that kind of player where he's going to go around committing fouls that are going to warrant yellow cards. He's not a Xhaka, he's not a Partey, he's not a battling central midfielder. But at the same time, if he gets the yellow for the first one and he gets a warning, he probably, changes his attitude in the game and thinks about challenges that he's going to go into, etc. Uses his common sense a bit more, and he wasn't given the chance to do that, and that's really frustrating. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a situation where that's ever. I don't know. I don't think that's ever happened. Probably has happened in the Premier League. I've just never seen it, but yeah, I can't think of a situation where there's something like that's ever happened before.
Well, Martin Keown said that on the commentary on the kind of post-match. He sort of mentioned that there's arguably a moral obligation for the referee to have blown initially or not give him 2 yellows for the reason that you said, that basically saying that if he doesn't know that he's going to get a yellow for the first one, then it's harsh, because if he does know that he's going to get a yellow for the first one, he probably doesn't do that challenge for the second one. So he said, is there a moral obligation there? I suppose the argument against that is that in a normal situation, the referee plays advantage, which he basically was doing. And in that situation, if another player was to have fouled the Wolves player, then it's quite possible for that other player to be given a yellow and for the referee to give Martinelli the yellow for the initial incident. So it's still possible, I guess what I'm saying is, for the referee to play advantage and yellow card Martinelli for the original foul and yellow card another Arsenal player if they were to have fouled, do you know what I mean? So you could argue that should it therefore be different if it's the same player, or should the same rule apply? I guess the problem is this stuff never really happens. And this is maybe by the letter of the law, yeah, he arguably had the right to do it, but I think we both agree he didn't need to do what he did, and no one would have criticized him if he had just given a yellow card.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what, mate? The other thing, right? We came into the second half with 2 central midfielders on a yellow card. Partey, Xhaka both had yellows. Gabriel ended up getting a yellow quite early in the first half, for second half, for time wasting on 60 minutes.
Was he? So I was just going to ask, was he actually time wasting, or was it harsh from the ref?
I think it was harsh. I do think we were playing quite slowly, and I think we were taking our time over stuff. But should he have got a yellow? I'm not really sure. But the point is, there were 3 players on yellows. All 3 of those players have been sent off recently. So if you're going to put money on a red card, it's going to be one of those. I don't think anyone was going to say that Martinelli is going to be the player to get sent off, right?
Yeah.
Crazy times. And then obviously we finished, with 9 players in the Wolves away game last season. So, when Martinelli goes, you're fearing the worst. But hey ho, it wasn't to be, and we managed to hold on. But just going on for some of the subs that kind of happened. So obviously one of the subs that happened came before the sending off. It was Smith Rowe that came on for Odegaard. And but then as soon as sending off happened, Saka came off and Holding came on. So what did you think? Particularly, I think, the ESR Odegaard sub, I mean, unless you disagree, it feels like just not a like for like, but yeah, okay, cool. Just it's a number 10 being switched for a number 10 or whatever. But the Saka Holding thing, what did you think about that substitution?
Yeah, I think at the time, I mean, look, when he took him off, I'm sort of thinking, well, he's not played for. I'm talking about Saka. Obviously, it's a tactical substitution, but well, let me start again. What I was going to say, I was quite surprised that he made that sub straight away, because it's obviously an attacking player that's been sent off. I think, and obviously Arteta's preempting, balls coming into the box, which is exactly what happened, and kind of having to defend backs against the wall. I thought it was quite. I was surprised that he did it straight away, basically. But in hindsight, on reflection, it was actually a very, very good sub, because all of those, well, not all of them, but a number of those balls that were coming in, it was Rob Holding on the end of them, or heading them away. And that kind of 30-minute cameo that he had, I can't think of him putting a foot wrong, really. So he just did exactly what he needed to do, which is, to be honest, Rob Holding is, you kind of normally get 7 out of 10s from him. So yeah, I mean, look, the only thing is, it pretty much just nullified us going forward. Every time we had the ball, we pretty much, we're trying to get it to ESR, and I think ESR was just trying to carry the ball as far forward as he could. Ended up running out of steam or getting tackled because there's just no support. Lacker's not really keeping up with him. There was not really anyone else going forward with him, and the ball was just coming back down and coming back into our box, and we were having to defend again. So that was the kind of only frustrating thing. But in terms of the actual sub, it worked out really well. I was quite surprised, actually, that Wolves were just chucking as many balls into the box as they were. Understand why. When you're one man up, it seems like the sort of thing that, the thing to do to try and make a breakthrough. And to be fair, they almost did a couple of times. The ball, there were a couple of hairy moments for us, but yeah, like I said before, I feel like we just dealt with a lot of those aerial balls really, really well, and yeah, Holding did a good job in that time he was on.
It's interesting, because I think that, for me, I think the reason why they had to do that is almost a byproduct of something that you just mentioned about us not having an outlet. So I think, clearly Arteta's used to having to think about what you do when you're down to 10 men. Yeah. And I think in this instance, what he said is, I'm going to pack the center of the pitch, right? I'm going to have a proper bank of 5 at the back, and I'm just going to pack the center of the pitch with just kind of, fairly industrious kind of players. Like, I'm not going to worry about my outball. I'm not going to worry about, someone being able to, a Pepe or whatever, which we can come on to in a second again. And I think because of that, Wolves couldn't go through centrally. It felt they couldn't break us down through the middle. They had to basically say, all right, well, ultimately we're going to just have to play the percentages. And that is when we've got Holding in the team, like you've mentioned. It feels like with Holding, White, Gabriel, they love that. It feels like they're really up for that. And at the end of the day, the result, whatever the result is, you look back on and you analyze the game in a different way. And now it feels like, because we've come away and won, well, it's a genius decision by Arteta to set the team up like he did when we were 10 men. Do you know what I mean? But let's talk about that, the third sub, right? Because I do want to talk about Lacker himself. So Lacker comes off, Eddie comes on. Let's talk about whether that's the right one, the right person to come on in a second. But Lacker himself, how did you think he played in the game? Because I do want to, I'm gonna bring something up that you said in our WhatsApp group. You mentioned that you had a feeling that Lacker was gonna, I think the word you said was bang. He's gonna bang from now until the end of the season.
I think I said that as soon as the transfer window shut. I was like, I've accepted. We haven't signed anyone. Lacker's going to do it.
You're a great optimistic fan, of course. But look, this isn't a loaded question. In your opinion, talk me through Lacker's performance today.
So I think he had a pretty good game in terms of what we know Lacker's going to offer you. He was kind of trying to disturb the defense quite a bit, chasing down balls, all of that kind of stuff, pressing well, getting involved, when getting involved in terms of, just like I said, trying to win the ball back. However, when you assess his performance, you have to consider the chance he missed, which is just like you said this in the WhatsApp chat, like if at that point, if we went on to lose the game, that missing that chance is basically unforgivable. Fortunately, that didn't obviously happen. And even the one in the first half, I'm not sure. I feel like he could have done a bit better with it. Like he's hit it straight at the keeper. It's not the easiest chance. I don't know if the one I'm talking about is the one where Saka.
Saka.
Saka 1-2 third guard, and he plays it across the face of the box, and across the box. Sorry, and yeah, he hits it first time. And he just hits it straight at Sar. But yeah, like I think that second, the what I'm kind of judging him on, to be honest, apart from his overall performance, is he had a great opening. Very little pressure on him, no pressure on him. Basically, he's through on goal at a point in the game where we've obviously just gone down to 10 men. He's got all the time in the world to pick his spot. It's like a striker's dream type of chance. You know, it's a Thierry Henry chance where it's an Aubameyang chance, isn't it? You know, bend it with your right into the far corner, and he tries to do that, and he just gets it. He just gets the execution wrong. And look, I saw on Twitter afterwards, he got quite a bit of abuse, and it's always going to happen. And everyone calling him rubbish, and you know, going back to the window, why we should have signed someone, etc., etc. I don't know. Like, yeah, I mean, from it hasn't cost us, so it's almost like he's kind of got away with it a little bit. If we'd have ended up conceding, that miss would look a lot worse. So, but at the end of the day, man, like in terms, you know, he is what we have got for the rest of the season, and so I can't really see there being too many games unless he goes through a really bad run. It's not even that if he doesn't score goals. It's more if he has bad performances, i.e. everything I talked about before, where he's in the team to, you know, drop deep, link up play, press, etc. He's not in the team to be making runs on the last man, as we know. So in terms of his performances, if they dip, they'd have to dip quite a bit for Eddie to be brought in as you know, starting Premier League games going forward. The only other option is like Martinelli, or he does some false nine setup or something. But yeah, so he is what we've got. So we're going to have to back him. It's probably partly why I'm being fairly kind to him in my assessment of his performance. What did you think?
I actually agree with everything you said. There's not, I don't really want to kind of go over it all again, because I think you've kind of really summarized it perfectly. I think regardless of those chances missed, and like you said, I think in particular that chance when we went down to 10 men, for a number of reasons, you know, captain, number 9, that, you know, that kind of moment really needed that composure that you'd expect from a half decent number 9.
Did you think he was going to score when he went through? Like, what?
That's a really good question. Really good question. I didn't, but I thought he'd hit the target.
That's the same. I thought he was going to hit the target. I thought he was going to score, to be fair, because I think if you hit the target, you're going to score unless you don't have to even hit the corner, really.
Yeah.
Because you've pretty much got the whole goal to aim at, and you can either put it right in the corner, or you can give the keeper the eyes and send him one way and put it the other way, or take it further forward and try and dink him. I don't know. He had a number of options. But yeah, sorry, you were saying.
No, what I'm saying is, like you say, you analyze a game so differently depending on the result, and you know, because we won, like you say, it probably doesn't need to be analysed in that much of detail. And in fact, we could probably focus on some of the good things that he did, which was he's putting in these amazing shifts for me week in, week out, where he really is working so hard, setting great examples, drawing so many fouls, being a real nuisance. And you know, the goal, a lot of the work, the goal that we scored, a lot of it was down to that work that he did, that desire to kind of, you know, go for the ball and cause a bit of kind of confusion and kind of collide with the keeper in that instance. So, you know, in a way, because of that and because of just the overall kind of effort that he had put in the game, willing to sort of let it pass. But it's more of a question for me that, again, we got away with it today, but and Laka is the best that we have. I completely agree with that. He's the best that we've got, and it's going to take a lot personally for me to think that you know, Eddie should be starting instead of him. But I just wonder if there are going to be a few more games where, and we saw against Burnley, where actually you really do need to put away your chance. It didn't cost us today, but look, hopefully it won't cost us going forward. I do think that it's the right formula, though. I don't think that it's Eddie. I don't think that it's any other kind of funky solution which sees Pepe there. I don't think Martinelli at centre forward is necessarily our answer either, because as we saw today in that first half in particular, I thought when things weren't really going very well for us in terms of we weren't really putting that much together, this guy Martinelli's energy and his ability to run with the ball in those wide areas was a real problem still. You know, we didn't have to be clicking as a team. He really has that in his locker. If you put him as a central striker in our system, he loses that because he's going to play with back to goal for so much of it. For me, that's not the solution. So, you know, it is what it is. We kind of go with it. Were you surprised when he did go off that it was Eddie that came on and not Nicolas Pepe?
Yeah, I mean,
or anyone else?
No, I was thinking it would be Pepe. I was saying, again, we were talking in our WhatsApp group, Aaron, and said the same thing. You know, why is Pepe not come on? I thought the same thing when it was Eddie. I guess based on Arteta's recent substitutions, I say recent, go back last 6-8 weeks, it's generally been Eddie. Even despite, you know, before AFCON, Pepe hasn't really been getting much of a look in. I mean, for me, the thing that I felt we needed was an outlet. So just an out ball, maybe Pepe kind of keeping a couple of defenders back, and, you know, just having that option of a ball kind of over the top where Pepe can run onto it. I don't know if Eddie necessarily offers you that, and he doesn't really offer the ability to hold the ball up either. So a little bit surprised just from what I thought we needed tactically, but not that surprised based on Arteta's previous subs in recent games. Yeah, and he was all right, Eddie, when he came on. I mean, like, he didn't really there wasn't too much for him to do apart from get himself about and just, you know, put himself in the right positions defensively and try and win the ball back. He didn't really have anything else to do, did he? So yeah.
Do you think Laka was taken off because he was tired? Was there an injury thing there, or
it just I'm not sure about an injury.
Yeah, because I was just confused because if he had gone off and if it was Pepe that came on, for example, then I could understand that there's a bit of a tactical thing there or whatever. But like you say, I think with Eddie, it doesn't, in that situation, for me, he's not offering. He's not. There's not really a different skill set that's coming in to deal with the situation that we're in than Laka, you know, than Laka had. So and Laka was working so hard. So look, I guess it was just. I hope there's no fitness concern there. But look, anyway, the man of the match, the official man of the match, was given to Gabriel. Who for you were your standout players or player today?
So yeah, I mean, Gabriel definitely stood out. Even obviously his goal defensively, he was very good, as was Ben White. But also even the ball, I don't know if you really noticed it was his ball through for Laka chance. Did that through ball was actually really yeah, it was actually a really good through ball. So I mean, I probably wouldn't disagree with Gabriel. You could argue Ben White. I thought, not to say he was man of the match, but I thought Cedric actually had a very, very solid game. And that's nice to see because we obviously don't know when Tomiyasu is going to be back, hopefully soon. But if he's not back for the next game, then it's good if Cedric obviously has a bit of form under his belt. Apart from that, I wasn't impressed with Thomas Partey again, to be honest. Like, yeah, okay, he did well generally, but there were some weird, eccentric moments from him, like the whole just the misplaced passes is the main thing for me. Like really weird decisions. Like there was one in the first half where we're under a bit of pressure, and all you need to do, like the ball comes to him, and all he needs to do is just hoof it, just clear it, and he tries to pass it out, and we lose the ball, and we've, you know, he's misplaced it, and they're attacking us again. There were a couple of other ones in central midfield where it's a kind of area you just can't afford to lose possession. It was one of these games where it felt like I was just waiting for the moment where basically him or Xhaka were going to give the ball away, and they just win the ball and go up the other end and score. It just didn't happen, thankfully. But yeah, like I wasn't overly impressed with him, being completely honest. But again, he's the best we've got, so we have to go with him. And not to say I want him dropped or anything like that, but you know, there's no other options basically, right? Go on, what are you going to say? Sorry.
It's because actually, I don't fully agree actually, because I agree that there were a number of times, I think particularly in the first half, that he was doing kind of classic kind of thing that we've seen him do a lot of, which is basic passes really badly and under hitting some passes and just, you know, basically making a straightforward situation into a really dangerous one for us. There were a couple of times he did that. But I did feel that overall, particularly in the second half, and particularly the fact that, you know, they were both on yellow cards, I felt Xhaka and Partey did a really good job of keeping their heads and doing what they really were supposed to do in terms of protecting that back four and being relatively calm and being relatively kind of composed at getting us out of pressurized situations. So times where I think it would be easy for the ball to go back into our defensive third, and Wolves would have obviously wanted that to happen. There were a number of times where I felt that Partey in particular did well under pressure to kind of turn the ball around and actually kind of go back forward and get it out of a dangerous situation. So yeah, like I think overall, maybe it's because I felt that given they both had yellow cards in the first half, one of them was bound to get sent off. Maybe because of that, I was pleasantly surprised that didn't happen.
You know what it is, mate, right? I just expect a lot more from him because of his price tag, probably because of his like reputation, his age, club he came from, experience, all of that. You know, I just expect a lot more. Even the decision that he made when, and I started swearing in our WhatsApp group, like the ball came out to him, and he shot and he slipped and he just cocked it all up and fine, he slipped. You know, you can say, oh, he slipped. You know, it's not his fault and just whatever. But like, how many times has he just tried to do something from 25 yards out and it just has never gone right? Like, he's not scored as far as I can remember, and he's not really looked that close to scoring. It was like he was getting closer and closer and closer game by game, and you know, back, I don't know. But so like, even these, just the decision making for me, I just want I want him to just be better in that area. It just sometimes it feels like he's fantastic on the ball where he can actually hold on to it for a second longer, and then it opens up a pass that wasn't there because he's decided to hold on to it for a second longer, and it works. And then sometimes he does it and it doesn't work, and he's pressed and he loses the ball, and all of a sudden Xhaka's out of position and we're screwed. And yeah, that's my worry. It's just like I said, I just expect a little bit more, which is probably why I'm being quite harsh on him.
I think it's fair. I think so if you take that element of it, the context of this is a player that was signed at the peak of his powers from a very, very kind of big club and all the rest of it. Yeah, man. And like, undoubtedly, I think overall the guy has underperformed in an Arsenal shirt, and even games like today, like you say, where yeah, like, you know, there are things that he did well. You still don't expect him to do you don't expect him to do anything bad given a player of that caliber, you know. So I'm completely with you from that perspective, for sure. Listen, so I guess whatever, you know, everything we've talked about, I think overall we agree it's a really positive day to be an Arsenal fan. It's a really positive day for the team, for the coaching staff. How big a win do you think this is? How big a result do you think this is in the context of what's happened over the last day or so, 2 days with regards to fixtures? So yesterday, Tottenham lost at home to Southampton. The day before, Man United drew with Burnley. Yes, West Ham won, but you know, the table now looks pretty interesting and a lot more. It's funny how in one kind of, you know, round of fixtures that everything can just change at the moment. And so Arsenal is sitting in 5th place right now on 39 points, having played 22 games. So level on points with Man United, but played 1 game less. Tottenham are 3 points behind us, but they've played a game less. And West Ham are 4th, you know, above us, just 1 point above us, and they've played 2 games more than us. In the context of, therefore, everything, mate, how important was this result?
So, I mean, look, it's potentially a huge result for our season. So I didn't expect us to win today. I don't think you expected us to win today. I thought we'd draw.
No, I didn't.
I thought it would be the kind of game that it was, but it was very tight. You know, Wolves don't concede very many. And yeah, I really didn't expect us to win. And I was looking at the next 3 games. So Wolves, Brentford, Wolves. And I thought we'd draw today, we'd win one of the other 2 and draw one of the other 2. Wasn't sure which one of the other 2 home games, and we'd get 5 points. So it set us up really, really nicely now for 2 home games that, you know, if we can go and win, and we always say this, you know, you look at the next few fixtures and say, if we can get 6 out of 6 points or whatever, if we can do that though, which is definitely attainable, obviously 2 home games that we should win, we put ourselves in a very, very good position for for dare I say it, top four. And I think, you know, if you put this result in the context of kind of what's happened recently, right? So the whole transfer window situation, if you want to call it that, not signing anyone, not signing a striker, what's happened with Aubameyang, um, the results that we had in January, you know, we didn't really score any goals. We only scored like 1 or 2 goals in January. We didn't win. We haven't won this year, I don't think. If I'm not wrong, yeah, we haven't won, right? In 2022, no. Yeah. So obviously the start of the year,
we've got more red cards than goals.
Yeah, there you go. So you know, if you add that into the mix as well, and like you say, the results over the last couple of nights, it's huge. It's huge. But I think we also need to just kind of keep our feet on the ground a little bit. Like I keep telling myself the target for the season was never top 4. Well, I don't think it was. Maybe it was, but maybe that was a stretch target. But I personally don't think it was ever top 4. It was getting into the top 6 and you know, getting European football again. So I think there's gonna be, like, this is the thing, right? Our squad is so small. It's only going to take Gabriel and a Partey injury or whatever before we're really struggling. And we're already out. We're already now no Martinelli for the next game, so it's already started, right? We're already one man down. We've got a squad of like 17 or 18 senior players. So who's to say? Like, I have no idea what's going to happen. Our run-in's pretty good. We've obviously got tough games, as everyone has, but we've been to quite a few of the tough. You know, we've been to Anfield, been to Old Trafford, we've been to Man City. So a few of those games that we probably would expect to lose are out of that we don't need to worry about them anymore. And there's quite a few 6-pointers left to go with the likes of obviously West Ham, United, and Spurs. So it's definitely, like, top 4 is definitely attainable. But like I said, I keep telling myself, as good as this result was today, as big as this result was today, I like I said, I still think, you know, kind of feet on the ground, take it game by game, see what happens. But, you know, if we don't get top 4, we don't get top 4. I don't think that necessarily means that from where we are now, if we don't get it, it's a failure. I don't go with that kind of notion. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, particularly on the injuries point. I think the other concern for me is the 3 games that we still have to be rescheduled, you know, which don't have dates confirmed yet, are 3 hard games. They're probably our hardest games. You know, it's Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Spurs, Arsenal. Those 3 games are probably our hardest fixtures, and we don't know when they're going to be yet. So those have the potential of really, depending on when they drop in, like, have the potential of really, really kind of screwing things up. Because at the moment, like you say, if you look at the rest of the kind of set of our fixtures in chunks, if you look at all the chunks in isolation, the chunks, there's no real chunk that looks that bad, say, like a 5 fixtures, but these 3 fixtures can come in and screw everything up. So currently, like you said, this Wolves game, with this Wolves game that we've just played now, if you look at the chunk of 5, let's just say that came in, or that's going to come in, right? You've got Brentford. We play Brentford at the Emirates next. Then we've got Wolves at the Emirates next. Then we're away at Watford, and then we're at home at Leicester. Home to Leicester. Out of those 5 games, Wolves away for me is quite comfortably the hardest. So yeah, we've come away with a win there. So that makes me feel very optimistic coming into these games, particularly, I think, you know, because even with our home record, you know, we very, very, very rarely lose at home. We lost to Chelsea and we lost to Man City, right? And so you'd hope to think that we're going to get some points on the board. We're also going to come into a period soon where the Champions League is going to kick back off, and then, you know, Man United are going to have Champions League fixtures. If we play Liverpool and Chelsea and you know around times where they've got Champions League fixtures, again, that might, you know, help us a little bit. We don't know. So there's loads of like twists and turns that can happen. But I agree with you in the sense that I didn't come into this season thinking that we were going to finish top 4. Like, top 6 was definitely the target. The way the season's panned out, the problem that we might have as fans that we're going to need to digest is, if we finish 6th, let's just say, from where we are right now, it would mean that it's likely that we're probably going to lose a few more games. And every time we lose a game, there's obviously a huge reaction. There's obviously a huge inquest. So it'll be interesting to see as fans how we digest that feeling. If, we do lose a few more games, and yes, if we finish sixth, which, like you point out, is something that I think, we would all accepted. There's a difference between being able to take a step back and accept that than it is when you're living through these games week by week and, seeing the results and seeing how they pan out. So it's interesting. Like, I personally agree with you. I think this result is massive. And we've just got to go. We've just got to just kind of build from here. It's a shame that Martinelli's out for the next game, but if there's one position that you think that maybe we've got options, it's those wide positions. You think the next game ESR will just come and slot straight in, really, and hey, we've still got Pepe there as well. So okay, mate. Look, I think, to be honest, given we've got a little while since till the next game, we've got Brentford in 10 days, 9 days, 10 days. So it's next Saturday. So we'll do a little episode before that where we'll preview that game. Obviously, there's probably not a huge amount that'll change between now and then, but there's no point us previewing it now. So look, is there anything else that you want to add, Myers, before we sign off?
I was just going to say, like, on just one kind of response, not really a response, but you made the point about, we are, what you said was if we end up finishing sixth from the position we're in now, it means we would have lost a few games, and the reaction off the back of that. And like, two things really. One is we are going to lose. Like, we're not going to go undefeated for the rest of the season, right? So even if we finish top four, we're still going to probably lost more than a couple of games. It feels like no one really wants top four at the moment anyway. So I think it's just going to be up and down. And the other thing, the point you made about the reaction is true. That is going to happen. That's going to come. It's just like, I don't know about you, but like, I don't like saying it because it makes us sound like we're better fans than those that don't. But going to matches or going to home matches, just going to matches, it's a very, very different vibe in the fan base, in the stadium, when you're in the pub before or after the game, talking with other fans and between ourselves, etc. It's a very, very different vibe to what you see on social media. So we're obviously on social media as the Arsenalics, and we're putting this out there on YouTube and Twitter and all the rest of it. And like, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, just basically what I said. Like, it's what the reaction that we will have after we lose a game, even after the Burnley result, which was really, really disappointing. I don't think any of us overreacted or, throwing our toys out the pram or saying Arteta out or slating the players. It was very much, this is a process, as much as people don't like that word, this is a process. This is a project. This is a young team, all of those things and more. So there are going to be results like that. It's going to take time. Today's result could have easily been very, very different. It's not like we went there and we created loads of chances and we came away with a 1-0 win, but deserved. I wouldn't even say we necessarily deserved a win. Yes, you could say that, but result could have easily gone the other way. So yeah, just the whole kind of reaction thing. There's nothing we can do about it. That is what it is. That is kind of like how that is football and social media now. Is very, very normal. But yeah, I just wanted to say that really. We see it from going to games. The vibe and the is very different. And 100%, like 100%, I would say, 100%, 99% of fans in the stadium get behind the team and get behind the players. Even that Burnley game, even when we got lost to Chelsea or we're getting thrashed to City against City or Liverpool, generally the support in the stadium is, I say more than generally, like I said, 99%. There might be the odd person, but otherwise majority of the fan base is behind the team and behind what we're trying to do. And that's why I say, sixth, even where we are now, even if we end up winning the next couple of games and we get into the top four and we're sitting 2, 3, 4 points clear of whoever's fifth, even then, if we finish sixth come the end of the season, I'll be disappointed. Of course, I'll be disappointed. It will be an opportunity missed, but that's it. It goes as far as that. It's not Arteta's failed, and we need to change the whole team again, and this player's crap and that player's crap. That's the thing that I just don't really like, to be honest. But like I said, you've got to live with it a little bit because that's just how it is at the moment, or this day and age.
It's hard, isn't it? Like sometimes I get drawn in on Twitter to various kind of debates, and I guess you can probably.
I saw you on the other day.
Go as far.
What did you tweet for the day? That was funny.
which one did I
It
tweet?
was on there. It got loads of replies.
It was about Ober and Barcelona and whatever. Like, so here's the thing, right? So just to go on a bit of a segue, here's my issue with Arsenal Twitter in particular, is that everything has to be so binary. Like, so with the, everything is apparently on, when it comes to Arsenal, everything has to be black or white. You have to be on someone's side. And that's what really frustrates me. So the Ober Arteta thing is a really good example. It felt like so many people on social media had to pick a side. They had to either just be like, well, Ober's completely in the right here and Arteta's an absolute bastard. Or they had to be like, well, Ober's just evil. He's just this menace. Da, da, da. And I think what I was trying to get at when I tweeted that was that if Ober is successful in Barcelona, and if he scores goals at Barcelona, that for me has got nothing to do with whether Arteta did the right thing or not.
Yeah.
You need to separate these two things. And I know some people say, well, that's just a stupid thing to say, because if he scores goals at Barcelona, then clearly he can still score goals. There's so many different things that you have to take into account. You could do a whole podcast on that, so I'm not going to get into it. But the point is, everyone seems to have to pick a side. But there are very few people who are saying, do you know what? I'm fine with the fact that we moved on from Ober. Maybe that was the right thing to do. I'm fine that we're moving in a certain direction. And I'm also really going to root for Ober at Barcelona. I still want Ober to do well. And it feels like there's a very small percentage of people who are visible on Twitter that feel that way. It feels like it's very binary. So I think that just frustrates me a little bit with Arsenal Twitter. But I think I remind myself a lot of the time that it's just not real. Like, it's just not real. Like, you don't know who's behind a lot of these accounts. Someone who could be very vocal about Arsenal or whatever, they might not be a real fan. They might not be a fan at all. They might just be someone who's just really bored and just loves kind of like trolling and moaning and whatever. You just don't know. And so, like you say, and I don't want to sound really sanctimonious, because I've had that accusation on Twitter before when I've referenced, when people have criticized, Arsenal, whatever, and I've said, to be honest, you know what, like 99% of fans in the ground are completely supportive of this player or this manager or whatever. And I immediately get someone will just come back and say, oh, well, that's that's such bullshit. Like, think fans in the stadium are the biggest fans, and like, do you think that if you don't go to games, you're not a fan? And that's not what I'm saying at all. But what I can comment on is like what you're commenting on, and what this podcast, in theory, a big core principle of this podcast is that we are fans who go to games. So we can comment on what it's like at games. We can comment on what it's like talking to the fans at games, because we are at the games. That doesn't mean we're better or worse or whatever. It's not really about that. But it is interesting that the fans at games, like you say, in a very, very kind of general way, but it feels like the vast majority are incredibly connected to this team and where it's going. And that is not necessarily evident on the rest of Twitter. So take it or leave it. That's sort of what I try to say to people on Twitter. It's like, don't blame. I'm telling you, don't shoot the messenger here. I'm telling you what it's like in the stadium, and I agree with it. I love it. I love the fact that we're so connected, as an Arsenal fan base in that stadium, with the manager, with the players. I love it, and I don't think there's anything about, you can't point to us in the stadium and say that we don't have ambition and we don't care about Arsenal winning. But it's just, we've got a bit more context, I feel, sometimes, when I feel like a lot of the fans in the ground are applying appropriate context. A lot of fans who don't go to games also apply, don't get me wrong, but it's important, I think, to know that it's not always the be all and end all. It's not always about winning every single game. It's not always like that. Can be what you aspire to, but you have to get there in a certain way. And I love the direction the team's going in, and it feels like, everyone, at least from from my experience of being at the games, it feels like the vast majority of that stadium is. So it's a good company, it's a good community to be a part of. It feels like
definitely, yeah. No, well said, mate.
All right,
can't disagree.
Cool. All right. Well, on that note, till next time. It's a really random one, but because I'm in Denmark for the next 2 days. I'm in a city called Aarhus. And I know that, like, I think that genuinely we've got about 3 listeners from Denmark. So, you know, if any of our 3 Danish listeners happen to live in Aarhus, please let me know. And I will buy you a drink.
Awesome. That would be, how amazing would that be if someone actually replies or messages or something and says, and that means they listen to the end as well.
Exactly.
You should have said that at the start. Then, yeah.
No. Hey, you know, if they didn't listen to the end, they just missed out on a free drink, right? So there you go. All right, mate.
Nice one.
All right, everyone.
Nice
Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate the support as always. So take care, and we'll talk to you soon.